there's many benefits to regular spinal rotation exercises. But whether or not this exercise is for you is entirely dependent on where you're currently at in terms of if you have lower back pain or if you're past it. I'm going to show you a gradual method to expose yourself to spinal rotation exercises, whether you're currently in lower back pain or you're trying to protect yourself from incurring back pain. Tune in. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for being here on our journey to solving lower back pain around the world through a movement-based solution. We're talking about spinal rotation, all right? So all movement occurs in 3 planes of motion. Number 1 is the sagittal plane of motion, movement that occurs forward and back, all right? Number 2 is the frontal plane of motion, movement that occurs side to side, across, okay? And number 3 is the transversal plane, any movement that occurs in rotation, okay? So those are 3 planes of motion. Now, the way I've found success with my athletes has been, for solving lower back pain, has been low-level, entry-level starting points for all 3 planes of motion. And I'm going to show you some of those today for the transversal plane. That's what we're doing when our spine rotates, okay? When we get to a point when we're out of pain, I predominantly start off with strengthening the lower back through the sagittal plane of motion with a bit of lateral flexion, as I talked about in our previous video. I don't always start with strengthening thoracic rotation because we find that the range of motion is a little bit limited there, and sometimes it causes little old injuries to kind of come up again. So any pain in the lower back, a little bit of movement under load, kind of stresses out some tissues where we cause a little bit of injury. I tend to ease on the side of caution and go slowly with introducing load to thoracic rotation. In the meantime, I still try to restore range of motion through body weight exercises. For example, in Spinal Freedom, we have something called Fixed Movement Patterns First, FMPF. Spinal Freedom is my online video course where it's a movement-based solution, 28 days, where we try and solve your back pain. So what I do in that series, in that video course, is I use CARS, controlled articulated rotation. So for thoracic rotation or spinal rotation, we use thoracic CARS. I'm going to show you what that looks like here. Okay, so we start with our hands on our shoulders, our chest up, our shoulders back, our shoulder blades together, and we're looking up. The chin goes to the chest. Now the slower we go, the better, but to not bore you, I'm going to try and keep it at a moderate place. We tilt to the side after we round our back. We rotate on one side across, and then we rotate across our back. The other shoulder goes up, we come forward, back down to the middle. A big unroll, chest up. That is our controlled articulated rotation. I'm going to show you from the side again. Okay, we reverse the motion, rotate on one side, rotate across the back. The hips stay forward, not trying to get anything from the hips. That is 1 repetition, and that is a part of the series called Fixing Movement Patterns First. This is a way to restore range of motion, to gradually exposing ourselves to some rotation in the spine without causing too much damage. And it's great information that if we find that that causes a little bit of discomfort in our lower back, to not exactly run away from it, maybe decrease the range of motion that we're going to. It's a good indicator of where we're feeling our pain and how we respond to what sort of movements. So at the very least, at the bare minimum, it's giving us good information without causing too much damage, if any at all. So I begin with those for many of my clients. I also do some thoracic rotations against the wall or on the floor, kind of mobilize the upper back. Those are 2 entry points that I use. When we get to the point of starting to add load to rotation of the spine, I start with cables or the 45-degree bench. So I'm going to show you the back extension after. First, I'm going to show you with the cable. I enjoy cables. I like bands as well. However, it gets to a point when we're not going to get enough adaptation from using bands as resistance, where when we want to get our back strong and the tissues that rotate the spine strong and long, well, it's nice to add measurable load so that we can increase our strength and kind of see some results and scale our results so that we know that we're improving and our back's getting stronger. That's why I like free weights and cables, okay? So for thoracic rotation, very simple. I'm setting up a cable to about sternum height, and I'm pulling the cable. I'm standing behind the cable. So if the line of the cable is coming straight down and out, I want to be behind it, so it gives me enough room and range of motion to kind of rotate. I'm interlocking my grip. It's up to you, preference. You can kind of stack your hand on top of the other. I'm doing a little bit of an intergrip. I'm stepping out slightly, and I'm bringing that to the center of my body. I want to always start out with the lever close to the center of mass of my body. Everything more compact is a little bit more friendly to start with. We will get to a point where there's nothing wrong with having our arms extended, but to start with, the easier method is to start with the load close to our center of mass before we ask for our core to kind of stabilize with a lever out there. So in this position, I'm literally just turning one shoulder back, looking forward the whole time, rotating as much as I can, coming back slowly, rotating back. Starting nice and light, okay? I'm trying to keep my hips underneath my spine. I don't want to arch back or move too much out of my hips and kind of turn. There's nothing wrong with that, but in terms of protecting our lower back, we want to stay specific and trying to keep the isolation of the exercise towards the spine, the lumbar spine and the thoracic spine. So you'll find the lumbar spine doesn't have as much range of motion. It's a stable joint. It's not meant to move so much, but the hips and thoracic spine are. So you can get a lot more movement out of those, and I would start with the thoracic spine when we're considering spinal movement. The hips are definitely a mobile joint, and they're going to be along for the ride. However, we're trying to keep the hips underneath the spine, so kind of squeezing them underneath and getting the rotation from our back. Now, for spinal rotation in the 45-degree back extension, this may take a lot longer for some people to get into, especially considering if we're experiencing localized back pain. So depending on where you're at in the journey, we got to find a way to find our entry point, whether it be going through spinal freedom, mobilizing everything around the body, around the lower back, gradually working up to strengthening the tissues around the lumbar spine, and then opening up some load. But this might take a little bit longer. I recommend strengthening the lower back through the sagittal plane of motion, forward and back, with some back extensions, with some 90-degree back extensions, the reverse hyper, RDL, seated good morning, as I've spoke in some of my previous videos. But once we get to a point where we have some decent integrity in the lower back and the posterior chain, we can get into the 45-degree back extension and introduce some spinal rotation. So the loading mechanisms can be as follows: just body weight hanging out at the top, having a nice metric hold, turning on the glutes, engaging the posterior chain so that our lumbar spine is secure and we're feeling a little bit of stimulation, just holding it up here, hands on our chest, and then gradually doing that rotation. Back down very slowly to the other side. Everything is slow to begin. Shoulder goes up, back down. Okay, we're just introducing some rotation to get the tissues around the back, the upper back strong. Going to free weight loaded, always starting close. I like to hug the weight. You can use a dumbbell, you could use a medicine ball, anything that you can measure and then gradually look to increase, whether it be progressively overloading the reps, sets, you name it. You know how to strengthen all that stuff. And if you don't, just message me or make a comment drop a comment so that you're not left alone. Okay, 2 barbell loaded on your back, but that is the route to introducing some tension and some integrity to the spinal rotators. Using the 45-degree bench is very nice because it stabilizes everything on the lower portion of the lower part of your body and the posterior chain while you incorporate. So it's very difficult and it takes some time to get to, but it's something we should always work towards to protecting the lower back, because a lot of the times we have chronic lower back pain where we think we're out of it, and one wrong rotation or bending over to pick up your kids, whatever it may be, might kind of cause a little bit of some discomfort and set you back a little. So spinal rotation, this is kind of a route that I use. The cars, fixed movement patterns first, then I like to strengthen through the sagittal plane of motion, slowly incorporating lateral flexion and then rotation to end. This is a great route to exposing our spine to some tension that's going to protect us. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. My name is Ranger Hussain. There's a link to my Spinal Freedom video course. If you're looking to get out of back pain, it's helped dozens of athletes. And if you have any questions, please don't be shy to ask. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.